Hello, friends. We are here talking about The Real Housewives of Atlanta, season 15, episode 14. I don't know. Like, the first half of the episode was like, I don't know. I don't know what I was really watching and where we were going. However, the second half was really good to me, I think. It was more entertaining. I don't know. It just felt like a really slow start. Maybe I'm being dramatic about it, but just for a while, I was just kind of like, but I like the end. So whatever. So we start the episode at Drew's house, and she's planning her event, which is coming later in the episode. But it was weird because there was a point where like we did that, and then we did this brief scene, and then we got back to Drew again. But I'll get there. I'm jumping ahead. They start talking about the event. They don't really develop it too much, but they're talking about it. And the key thing there was that like the event planner told her like no alcohol because that contributes to mental health issues or in some capacity. And she was just like, oh, no alcohol, like, dang. And I'm like, oh, yeah, because you need alcohol for an event. So I felt her on that. But then we just kind of say, like, oh, well, forget that. Then we go to Sonya's house, and Sonya is announcing that she's pregnant to her husband and then to her family. I thought that that was super cute. And they talked briefly, but kind of in a kiki way, about like her sister and her mom and her dad moving out, which we've been talking about for a while, and it was kind of like this like drama thing, but this one was just more so like kiki, but yeah, we are moving out, and it's ironic that you're pregnant now. So then they're like, okay, but forget about that. And then we jump back to Drew and Ralph, and they're on date night. And cool. I thought it was interesting because we haven't seen that, and I did immediately draw back to like whatever season that was, the prior season where they went to counseling and they were told to do date nights. Like I remembered that, and then she brought up that they were supposed to be doing that, but they hadn't been doing that, and they're here. And she reminds us, which she mentioned prior, that Ralph had stopped counseling, but she was still going. And basically, she's just like of the mindset, which I liked. She's of the mindset like, well, I'm gonna work on myself. Like even if Ralph isn't gonna go and he's not gonna fight for the relationship or whatever, I'm gonna fight for me. This is what Drew was saying. She's like, I'm gonna fight for me, and I'm gonna be good. And Ralph can fall in how Ralph falls in. So I'm like, great. I agree with that. Cool. Like it really does seem like Drew is growing. And it does kind of seem like that kind of bothers Ralph in a way. And also, Ralph is just, I don't know, he seems so bothered. Like I said it before, like whenever he's filming, he just seems so bothered. So he's upset about something. And he's just kind of like, he's trying to reason. And he's just like, I feel like with the counseling, like we bring things up and we're supposed to like move on and resolve them. But it seems like we just kind of just like pile up and bring up everything. It's kind of what it felt like he was trying to say, which is what the like counseling is for, like to address those issues. So, that highlighted an issue, and basically he feels like as somebody that thinks like Ralph and acts like Ralph does, he feels like if you like pile on all these things, and they would inevitably lead to divorce. And Drew's like, and I'm like, so, but we knew that about Ralph. He didn't like to have things piled up on him, and basically he like forces a positive on it. He's like, I haven't had any blow ups in like a year. Like, I don't need counseling. Like, I haven't been blowing up at you like I did in the past. And we get these flashbacks of Ralph being Ralph. So that was interesting. But yeah, he felt like he needed to get some credit for not having as many blow ups as he previously did. So I guess, that was something. And then, one of the final things is just Drew is basically like, this is about my growth. Like, I want to grow as a person. I want to continue to grow. I don't know what Ralph is on, but I'm going to grow. And she's like, I'm working. I got things going on. And then Ralph is just like, well, now you're booked and busy, but I've always been busy. And Drew goes, and I'm like, so it really, like, we have been missing it. That's why this scene was so random. But to see them, like, interact like that, awkwardly beefing on a date, it made sense because that's what they did last season. So now I'm like, oh, okay, we're back. Like, I'm seeing it more now. Maybe they could have, like, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe they could have, like, sprinkled this throughout the season, because now the season's about to be over, and it feels like they're gonna rush into, or at least through, the, like, divorce storyline. So I don't know. Like I don't how many episodes do we have left, but I don't know. I feel like they could have done that. And then we skip right on over to another scene. It was very random, but I think that it kind of felt like You know, where you're like switching the songs on the radio to like find, or like the radio stations to like find the station that's like good enough. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, I'll ride out to this. That's kind of how the beginning of the episode felt. Like, they kept kind of like switching around to see where would be a good place to land or something like that. So then we get to Shamia, Kenya, and Candy, and they're linking at Kenya's house. And Shamia's hair looks a fool, and Kenya is telling them that she wants to have another baby. So they do this scene where they split the screen, and it's like Shamia's excited and Candy's confused, which is a cute edit, but they've shown it to us 13 times throughout the previews, so I had already seen it. But it was cute. It was really cute. Candy asks the inevitable, like, who's going to be the father? And we get the storyline about the fact that Kenya, she's going to use her embryos, which she has with Mark, so Mark will be the father. And I already gave my opinion on that, I would do it. Shamia agreed. And it did seem like, at first, like, from the little face that Candy made, like, you would have thought she was going to, like, disagree with it. But it didn't give that. She was more so just, like, make sure all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. But, go ahead, do your thing. So that was cool. They then get into the real tea. So this is where it starts to get interesting. I wish I had clocked how long the episode was at this point, but I don't remember. But this one, it starts to get interesting. And basically, they spill the tea. I think it was Kenya. She spilled the tea that... How did she know this? I didn't even really pick up how she found out. Well, she spilled the tea that, basically Martell came in town. I guess Sheree's birthday had passed. That was another thing. Like, I feel like they weren't really telling me what season we were in. I feel like they kept trying to allude to it because they would show, like, Christmassy stuff. And I know, like, a couple episodes ago we had talked about Thanksgiving and stuff like that. But where we land on this episode is, like... I don't know. It's like around Christmas, before Christmas, after. I don't know. But so the timeline is weird. And I feel like they're trying to catch us up and tell us about some stuff that kind of happened in a big interim that we missed. But maybe we missed it because it was the holiday and they were on break. But I don't know. That's the feeling I was getting. But, they drop us right in. Kenya has the tea that Martell took Sheree out for her birthday and their friends are involved. And basically he didn't pay for the whole bill. And he, like, asked all of them to contribute to Sheree's birthday meal. And, I mean... And Kenya says the bill was around $1,500. So, yeah. But basically, the tea here is that she got the... Well, that's tea. But the tea here behind the tea is that she got the tea from CYNTHIA and Marlo, who were, like, reading Martell about it. So that was interesting to see that basically, like, on Sheree's side of the alliance, her girls are kind of, like, clowning her because they're clowning Martell, they're clowning her. So that was interesting to see, interesting dynamic. I don't think, though, that we will see anything else about that, to be honest. I don't even know if it'll really get addressed very much, and even if they do address it, they probably won't really say much about it, because that's kind of how they do that. So, but I did think that was interesting, at least for us to be able to see it. And it's cool that they put it in there, but that's probably the most that we're going to get. The producer asked Sheree, like, what did Martell get you for your birthday? And she said, he said an Alexander McQueen bag. And she kind of said it like I just said, like she wasn't sure. So she says he got her that. I don't know what the follow-up question was, but she was just kind of like, I don't know what she was saying, but she was just saying basically like he doesn't buy expensive designer. She kind of stuttered through that statement as well. So that was very telling. And I guess now we're getting this like Sheree's man is broke editing, I guess, because that's what I was thinking. I'm like, what are they trying to show us? Like, yes, T, obviously I get that, but I'm like, are they trying to show us something? Like, is there a story they're trying to build here at the last minute? So I'm like, okay, we're getting a Martell is broke thing. Like, I wonder if that's something from Love and Marriage. I don't watch it, so I wonder if that's like a running tea about Martell, or if they're like making that a thing. So that's interesting. I don't know also though how much I think we'll even get into that like dynamic of it, like the Martell of it, like they'll ask him about it or anything. I think it was just something shady to put in there. So, that was that. And then the funny thing, I guess, was that Sheree still has an AOL email. I was trying to look for a read in that, because I'm like, I wonder if there's a real weird reason why she still uses that, but maybe I'm thinking too deeply into it. But it's Sheree, so it always feels like it's something behind it. But that just could be the millennial in me. And then finally, we get to Drew's event. the highlight of the episode, I guess. But the way that it was so chopped and screwed with the information at the beginning, I kind of forgot. So it just kind of felt like we circled back, like, oh, we're back to Drew. Like the episode just didn't really have a flow to it. But we're back with Drew for like the fifth time this episode, and we're finally at the event again. Like I said, I think it was a really creative event to come up with. I like the stuff that they were doing. Like, they had the wellness drinks, and she said they're going to drop it with Drew. So I'm like, oh, like, good to rep your product and talk about it and talk about your business. Even though Marlo clocked that the website wasn't up with the 404 error. But, and I wonder if we'll get into that too. It just seems like the season is about to be over. I feel like, but so many seeds are being planted right now that I feel like we maybe could have talked about throughout the season. I don't know why they're being put in right now. I feel like they could have been happening like simultaneously, but yeah. So anyway, they talk about that. Ralph walks in, so I'm glad that they re-showed it and kind of like showed a recap because it was really mixy seeing what happened with the whole Ralph thing when he came in and didn't speak with Drew. It felt to me like it was being over dramatized at first, but then when I really saw the footage, I was like, oh, okay. So basically, Ralph comes in and Drew sees him, so they're kind of like this. And it's like, this is Ralph, this is Drew. And they like see each other, but then Ross is over here, who is Sonya's fine husband. So Drew's like, hey, like kind of gave like a general hey, but you would assume it's going to Ralph. But it kind of gave like a hey, y'all, to like both of them. And she like goes over to hug Sonya's husband first. So you can see, and it's happening really fast. So then you can see Ralph kind of like sees it, and he doesn't like that. Like you see, it's the Ralph look. He doesn't like that. So he takes a sip of his drink to compose himself. I felt that because he's like, oh, okay, bet. And this is happening fast. So I'm like, oh. And literally immediately after she hugs Ross, not too long of a hug, not too long of a sip on Ralph, she turns back and Ralph kind of just like pump fakes her and goes to hug everybody else.
Walk right past.
I was like, hey, husband. Hey, Ross.
Hey, what's happening? Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Hey, Tony.
I thought she was coming to get me.
So I guess if everybody can just...
Oh, y'all haven't seen each other.
So at that point, watching that whole interaction, I was like, yeah, they need to get a divorce. Because that's crazy. Like, that was... Honestly, if you sit there and dissect and watch that's what I'm saying. I'm glad that they did the replay of it. Because when I watched what really had occurred, I was like, oh, that's crazy. Like, yeah. So, if that's really like the pettiness level in their relationship, or was, absolutely gonna get a divorce. Absolutely, I would have to agree. They're having the event. Like I said, I think it was a good event. I like that they did the like meditation thing, and I did make a note of like, I'm like, okay, this is consistent with Sheree's like forced trip or whatever for healing. So I'm like, okay, maybe this was like a running theme of the season to play off of the chaos. I'm not mad at it. I guess it just wasn't super cohesive. Or maybe it was just a coincidence and I'm making too much out of it. But if it was a production thing, I would give a C for effort. But because, it connected. But I think Drew's event, obviously, everybody knows was way better. And so, yeah. They have the meditation. Candy gets emotional. I wanted them to kind of tie into this a little bit more. Again, I'm being very overly analytical, but like I feel like Candy's been getting this weird edit this season to try to make her look like a villain a little bit. So then if they do show these, like I would assume if they're showing these scenes where she's being emotional, I would hope that it's like to show like I don't know, like the balance there, like the humanity there, since they try to act like she's so like not human and not like emotional, maybe. But it almost feels like they just show it to like say like, oh, well, isn't this ironic type of thing. But again, I could be thinking too much into it. But it just always feels a little like dense to me. I say that to say I don't know if it's going to be addressed any further. I think like what she said and just saying like she been emotional, she had a lot going on. I think it was just for the sake of doing it. But I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it wasn't fully realized. Like I don't know what they were trying to show me there. But it was interesting. And then I also made a note of like, why does Drew always have on these like random like furry like feathery things? Like when they went on the date, she had on that weird jean jacket with the furry sleeves, which wasn't terrible, but it was interesting. And then at the retreat or the event, she had on like a feathery. It was yeah. Now they get to have this. Really did feel like the Portugal trip part two, honestly, now that I think about it, because they do the big meditation thing and then they have a meal, and it's like the same format. Like we get to do something positive, but then we get to go have a meal and things get messy. So that's what I'm saying. That's why the end of this episode was really very like entertaining for me, especially because Cynthia Bailey was there and she was like getting it going, and it didn't feel produced. It felt like she was just back at work, like, okay, ladies, like, like, but we'll get into it. So they sit back down, they're having like a meal or whatever, a group meal. Like I said, it's feeling like Portugal part two, so I'm excited because that was good too, in my opinion. Part one was good. And so Drew's case is brought back up. Like at this point, they're just throwing things at the wall. You can tell, and it's like, okay, cool. Like they're ready to work. It's a big group. It's like it's giving pretty much everybody. I'm pretty sure it was everybody. Nobody was missing. So it's like, yeah, let's get to it. Let's do it. Great. So Drew's case is brought up. They give us like a scene of her doing like some type of weird press thing where they looked very like Lemonade-esque uniformed. It looked very posy. It was interesting. So they show Drew doing that, and Drew goes into the story because Cynthia's like, well, wait. Cynthia leans in. She's like, well, wait, like what happened? Can you tell me about that? And I'm thinking, yes, because Cynthia didn't actually have to do that. Like, I feel like we all generally know what this case is. It had been on the social media, so I'm sure Cynthia had clocked it. She didn't know the details, which is what I understand, but, like, she didn't need them. Like, she could have gone on with that interaction without those details. However, Cynthia knows how to, like, film this show, so she's like, oh, she didn't give us enough, like, and we're not gonna take up enough time, like we're still on the salad, and we haven't even really gotten into it. So she's like, can you tell me more about that? So I lived for that. Cynthia ate that, and literally as I was writing that note, like more was coming at me. So I'm just like, but okay, we'll keep going. So then, she tells Cynthia, she's like, sure, Cynthia, I can tell you all about it. So she starts giving details, which I thought was really good. And I like the edit of where they show, like, Drew inside and Ralph outside, and they're both telling the story. She's telling the girls, he's telling the guys. And their stories are lining up. They're actually lining up. So I'm like, bet, okay. And the story made sense to me. At the end of the day, it was a principle thing for them, so I get it. But I like that she was throwing numbers, and she almost got me. Because at the end, when she was like, yeah, like we paid her the 1,000, and then she she wanted 1,000, but then she sued us for 10. I was like, that's interesting. But then the ladies clocked, like, she said 1,000, and I'm like, she did say 1,000. But then I'm like, well, were we mistaken? And then production showed the documents, so I was like, So that is weird that she would like lie and hike it up to 10,000, even though it was 1,000. And it was public record that it was 1,000. I don't know why she would do that, but it was interesting. So we get into that. And it's cool. I like how they touch and go. Touched on that and just kept on going. They start getting into a next topic. So I really like how they did that. So it cuts back to, what was it? Oh, it cuts back to Sheree. So Kenya asked Sheree about her birthday. And Sheree's like telling her about the dinner, and the girls are clocking the tea, basically like, Candy wasn't invited and Drew wasn't invited. I forgot the reason Drew wasn't invited, but who cares? And then the big thing was really that, Candy wasn't invited. She was like, oh, well, Sheree's been acting weird towards me. She didn't invite me, And Sheree did, which I clocked, she did say like, oh, I don't know if this information was asked or if she was offering it, but it seems like she offered the information like, oh, I invited friends that I've known for such a long time, from 30 years. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, that sounds dope. Like offering that information though, if she wasn't asked, it seems like she's already trying to create the story to be like, this is why y'all weren't invited. It kind of felt excuse, like she was giving an excuse without even just, because she already knew it was going to be tea, so she was giving an excuse as she was just being asked about the party. The why didn't we get invited thing hadn't come up yet, so but it felt like she was leading into it. But then she adds even more to say, yeah, like friends I've known for 30 years, and I invited Courtney, and and it's just like, okay, so Candy clocks that tea, and she's like, that's some BS, basically, but it's Sheree. And it feels like it was offered up, so that's even worse. Offered up BS from Sheree. And basically, Cynthia's back working again. You know, the girls kind of go in at it a little bit. They do a little back and forth, but you know how the back and forth can get like really repetitive and kind of hit a dead end, like it's been doing this season. So it kind of went back and forth, and then it was like, okay, we're getting to where we've gotten over there. Everybody's chimed in. We're good off of that. Cynthia keeps it moving. And she's like, well, because let's bring it home as well. Like, let's not leave it open-ended, like I just said. So Cynthia's like, let's bring it home. And she's like, well, Sheree, I think maybe Candy just would have wanted to be invited. That's all, And if you felt like, she wasn't going to come, just give her the opportunity to decide if she's going to come or not. Like, invite her. Yes. You know what I'm saying? So she closed that up, wrapped that up. I'm just like, Cynthia's doing amazing. And they touch and agree, so everybody's good on that. And then we move on again. Cynthia's still working. So Cynthia taps in again, and she's like, well, ladies, new topic. I heard something about there being some divides in the group. Like, we were covering so much ground in one meal, and that's really what Housewives is. Like, when the ladies sit down for a meal, we need to you argue, go back and forth, beef, all of that, like conversation, dynamics, like that's really what Housewives was, especially Real Housewives of Atlanta. And Miss Cynthia Bailey comes back and she's like, ladies, I'm bored. So I was enjoying all of it. And I don't remember who kind of led into it, but for some reason it gets to Mayetta. And Mayetta starts, because somebody was just like, yeah, a lot happened. Then it immediately jumped to the collusion thing. So we cue to Mayetta. So the friends of the show are working as well. So Mayetta comes in. She, unfortunately, and I like Mayetta. Unfortunately, she did a little bit of a fumble. She did because basically, and there may be more to this story, and I'm looking for it. But basically, she's telling the story, and she's like, yeah, like blah 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 blah. Conversations were had. Seems like there was a collusion. Oh, and Drew, Courtney called you a B word. So that was that. And Courtney's like, no, I didn't. And she's like, yes, you did. Yes, you did. So they have that type of back and forth. Very weird. The friends, I'm just realizing the dynamic now. The friends of the show are arguing. That's interesting. I don't know. Have we ever seen, I'm sure we've seen that before. But I think that was cute. Like, Cynthia had the girls working. I appreciated that. So, I mean, that was fine. But then they show us the footage, and it seems as though Sonya is the one that referred to Drew as the B word, because she referred to her as the B word. She didn't necessarily say that. Whatever, that's semantics, but, So, it seems as though it was Sonya, and they tried to make that very clear with production. So, that was that. So, Mayetta definitely kind of fumbled on that. But whatever, They are done with the meal. I think it was successful. We didn't linger too much in it. We didn't get it to be continued, in and out. So I would give that meal a A- with extra special bonus points to Cynthia. So then we move on. They're outside now, and they're taking pictures of the event. I like how Sonya announced that she was pregnant. Like, on her t-shirt, she's like, oh my God, look. And like, look at the picture that I just took. So they could see it. But it didn't really work out that way. But I liked the idea. But that, flopped a little bit. But I thought it was cute. I thought it was super cute. They were happy for her. They hugged. I thought that was a cute moment. So we get like a good moment in the event. We get the dinner. It gets a little messy, but we get some resolves in there. And then at the end, we get a really nice, cute moment. And, the last thing that we get is we're back to Drew. Very Drew heavy this episode. So, yeah, I think that, they're going to be depending on her a lot because we're obviously squeezing a lot of stuff in at the end. So these final episodes should be interesting and very Drew heavy. But this was interesting. But yeah, so she gets to her counseling, and basically they go back over the things that she's been saying, like, how they're making sure they highlight this because we've heard it now about 4 times. Drew's still in counseling, Ralph is not. Got it. And basically she's just like, Ralph has moved out of the bedroom. And one thing that bothered me was that she kept, like, referring to the last date that they had when they did, like, the bowling and stuff. And she's like, since that last date, Ralph has been really cold. Since that last date, Ralph has moved out of the bedroom. Like, things are weird. And it's like, things have been weird. And they've gotten here for a reason. So I wish that, again, this is something that could have been occurring all season long. All 14 episodes of now, we could have been talking about this weird relationship between Ralph and Drew, because I doubt that the bowling event with the Buffalo Wings is where this big fallout happened. So I just feel like that story needed to have so much more depth to it. So that was a little frustrating. But, so whatever. She's talking to him, and what I really liked was her highlighting the fact that she's awake now. Like, she's like, I woke up, I'm seeing things for what they are, and the counselor was like, seems like you don't want to be gaslighted anymore, which felt prompted, but it was very pointed and it was very accurate. And she's just like, yeah, like, I'm awake, like, I'm growing, and if he doesn't want to grow, then that's on him. I'll let him come in when he's gonna come in. And the counselor's like, well, does that worry you? Like, because you guys are married, like, he has to be where you're at. And she's just like, yeah, well, it is what it is, which is kind of her mood. And I didn't have a problem with that because it does feel like Drew has grown and she's just not dealing with Ralph's mess anymore. It felt like that because obviously we weren't being told throughout the season. But now on episode 14, we're hearing her say it. So that's nice affirmation, I guess, and nice information to have. Basically, the counselor ends it out by saying, well, when is enough enough? And that's an excellent question. So, I'm not mad at it. I will have to say the second half, if it was actually half, I didn't measure, of the episode really kind of carried it for me and really brought us some type of hope, because the beginning, there was good information at the beginning, but I wasn't understanding where we're going. I'm in the feeling that we're rushing to squeeze some info in. And if that is because they stretched out the Marlo versus Candy and the Candy versus Sheree and the Portugal trip and the sprinkle of Courtney, which is kind of the Portugal trip, and the Drew versus Candy, which is kind of the Portugal trip and a half. If that's because they stretched those storylines out for 14 episodes, that's very disappointing. Because I feel like we could have gotten those, what was that, 4.5 things over before the mid-season trailer. Or like right at it. So, just a thought. But yeah, it was okay. It wasn't a bad episode. I am not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say that. But yeah, it was a good episode, and we're just. I didn't really get into the next week's episode. Like, I don't remember what the preview was, but I'm happy that Cynthia's back. I can say that. Like, she really kept this moving for me, and her confessionals they're spicy. I'm energetic when she comes on the screen. So, thank God we have her, and that's all I can really say right now. But we'll see what happens next week.